Hello students, welcome to the present segment on Twelfth Night. As I have told you in the previous segment, we'll be dealing with the character of Malvolio over here. And as you know, the character of Malvolio is characterized by its element of frivolity, absence of frivolity, rather, dislike of frivolity. And he always objects when Sir Toby and others are in a state of revelry. And it was because of his objection at one point in the play that ultimately we see Maria cooking up a plot to retaliate against Malvolio. And this leads to what is known as the Malvolio subplot or the Malvolio affair in the play. Now, is Shakespeare satirizing any particular political or say philosophical trait in Malvolio? Well, there's a temptation to call Malvolio a Puritan, and of course the literal meaning of the word Puritan is conservative. But when we talk about Puritan and Puritanism, we very well know that it's a kind of a conservative sect of Protestantism, so to say. And as I've told you, it's a common mistake to confuse Malvolio with a Puritan. But Shakespeare makes it a point to mention in particular that Malvolio is not a Puritan. Now, this is the first extract which we are going to read, and this is Act 2, Scene 3, lines 140 to 146. Act 2, Scene 3, lines 140 to 146. You see Maria commenting, "The devil's a Puritan that he is, or anything constantly but a time pleaser, an affectionate ass that cons state without book, and utters it by great swords, the best persuaded of himself, so crammed as he thinks with excellences, that it is his ground of faith, the best persuaded of himself, so crammed as he thinks with excellences, that it is his ground of faith, that all that look on him love him, and on that vice in him will my revenge find notable cause to work." Let's take this up one by one and see how far Maria's estimate of Malvolio's character is properly done. The devil, a Puritan that he is not a real Puritan, nor anything constantly, but does not have any constant philosophical preoccupation as such, but a time pleaser. He goes with the time. He adapts his principles with his interests, with his necessities. Okay. And an affectionate ass that cons state without book. She is abusing him. He is an ass who is very affected. Affectionate is affected, meaning he is full of posturing. And he is very fond of quoting lines from books. Okay? And utters it by great swords, the best persuaded of himself, so crammed with excellences. Sworth is, a swath or a quantity of corn that can be cut with one sweep of the scythe. So what she means is by huge amounts. She uses the word swords over here to bring in this agricultural imagery, and it is his grounds of faith that all that look on him love him. He is so full of high opinion about himself that he feels that whenever people would see him, they would fall in love with him. And on that vice in him will my revenge find notable cause to work. Well, this is his weakness. And this will be the modus, one very important hole, one very important lapse, which will give me the modus operandi of what I'm trying to do with him, to play a practical joke with him. So, the first few lines are very common in Shakespeare's times. Actually, what they denote, the character type is very common in Shakespeare's times. You'll see later in in Restoration Comedy of Manners, you will find characters who are very inflated. The Restoration fop, if you remember. But at the same time, you find that Maria is not very wrong in estimating him as a person who can completely change his orientation with the necessity of the time. The moment Malvolio comes to realize or falsely realize that Olivia is attracted towards him to some extent, he completely changes his personality, and this is what Maria calls as a time pleaser. Of course, that makes Malvolio ludicrous over here, and that actually ultimately leads to the Malvolio matter, or you see the complication in the subplot. But his high-headedness, his tendency to put on postures, and that too postures of people who are well versed in things, well read, all does not suit with his social standing, which is that of a steward. And you have to understand that in Elizabethan society, the idea of hierarchy is very important. And we can also find out that Maria has found out the particular lapse in him, the idea that he is an attractive person. Maria has found out that lapse in him to ultimately, make a fool of him. So that is also something that bespeaks well about Maria's understanding of this character. But isn't it ironic? Because Maria is also trying to insinuate herself into a kind of a higher class over here. And while we see Malvolio being treated very wrongly because of his social ambitions, Maria, however, is clever enough to rise in the social order without being abused or without being resisted in any way. At the end of the play, we see Sir Toby marrying Maria. Maria is obviously, who is Olivia's maid, is obviously made to rise up in the social order, and Maria is deliberately doing that throughout the play, just in the way Malvolio imagines himself to be Count Malvolio. So coming from Maria, this estimate, though kind of a correct, bringing out a kind of a correct insight into Malvolio's character, coming from Maria, this estimate is also, mixed with a tinge of irony. Now, Malvolio behaves badly with many characters in the play. And some of the characters are those whom we like the heroine Viola. But he also behaves very badly with Feste. And we'll see that in Act 1, Scene 5. Act 1, Scene 5, line, it would be 79. I marvel your ladyship takes delight in such a barren rascal. This barren rascal is no one but Feste. I saw him put down the other day with an ordinary fool that has no more brain than a stone. Look you now, he is out of his guard already. Unless you laugh and minister occasion to him, he is gagged. I protest I take these wise men that crow so at these set kind of fools, no better than the fool's zanies. Let's try to explain. I marvel your ladyship takes delight in such a barren rascal. Dull-headed fool. Barren rascal would here mean dull-headed fool. And I'm surprised that you entertain these people. That's what Malvolio is telling Olivia. I saw him put down the other day with an ordinary fool. Now sometimes there were, witty exchanges and witty competitions between fools and clowns. And he was, just as you often have, between pedantic people, okay? One pedantic person defeating the other in a kind of a competition of pedantry, so to say. It's not so common in Elizabethan England. You had duels on more practical purposes, but it's very common in Bengal, for instance. We call it Pondite Lorai. In those days, they used to have, witty, exchanges and witty competitions of witty exchanges between clowns. So he had one such, and he was defeated over there. So Malvolio is actually referring to that. I saw him put down the other day with an ordinary fool that has no more brain than a stone. And his opponent over there, who actually defeated Feste, was, according to Malvolio, a stone-headed person. Look you now, he is out of his guard already. Unless you laugh and minister occasion to him, he is gagged. I protest, I take these wise men that crow so at these set kind of fools, no better than the fool's zanies. Look you now, he is out of his guard already. You can see Feste is not answering. So you see, I have been able to outwit him. That's Malvolio's point of view. Unless you laugh and minister occasion to him, he is gagged. Now, if you laugh at him and if you give him opportunities to befool you, otherwise he is gagged. He is silent. He can't speak at all. I protest I take these wise men that crow so at these said kind of fools. Now, I protest I take these wise men that loudly crow so is cry loudly at these said kinds of fools, persons who have wits and who yet laugh at these fools, and they are no better than the fool's zanies. Now, what are zanies? Assistants. So it's a kind of indirect hit towards Olivia. If you have intelligence and if you still entertain these fools by laughing at their antics, then you are behaving like their assistants. Okay, so you can see the kind of conservatism and a kind of a spoil sport element in Malvolio's character. He is Olivia's steward, but he often forgets his social rank, which is unpardonable in the Elizabethan society, which was so obsessed with the sense of hierarchy. So he often forgets his social rank, and if he wants to hit anyone, he will hit, irrespective of the fact that whether it's Olivia or whether it's Feste or whether it's Viola. In the next segment, we'll be carrying on with Malvolio's character, and we'll see how he treats Viola at a very crucial moment of the play. Thank you.